Hi everyone, it's Obi Abuchi here with the Leading from Your Core podcast and Vodcast. This show is dedicated to helping leaders all around the world discover leadership wisdom, stories, and insights that will enable you tap into the power of leading from the inside out. Our current season is focused on mental resilience among leaders, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Garry Turner on the show. Welcome, Garry. Really excited to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have.
Likewise, thanks for the invitation.
So just so our listeners and viewers get to know who you are, and I'll tell them a little bit about how we met. Garry is a strategic advisor and thinking partner to mission-driven startups, scale-ups, and progressive corporations that are aware enough to know that regenerating our humanity from the inside out, words that I love, individually and collectively, is critical to turning around our planetary work and social justice challenges. Alongside working within a global corporation, Garry is also the founder of HEXO Change, which is a transformational change practice, holding space, guiding and facilitating reconnection to ourselves, one another, and systems at large, with the aim of reimagining and co-creating just relationships for collective well-being. I actually met Garry recently at Yetunde Hoffman's What's Your Story conference. I spoke at the conference the previous year. Garry was one of the speakers at the 2021 conference, and Garry's story absolutely connected with me, and your vulnerability and your insight and messages to not only leaders but to everyone was so profound. I'm absolutely delighted to have you, and knew that I wanted to have this sort of conversation. So, hey, Garry, once again, great to have you on the show and looking forward to our combo. Just so people get to, I mean, I've clearly introduced you, but, you know, there's more that you can say about yourself. And so that people get to know who you are, just tell us a little bit about yourself. And then from a leadership perspective, what is it you enjoy most about being a leader?
Yeah, thanks again for the invitation, Obi. Just amazing to be with you. And it's amazing, isn't it, when you talk about that event, that incredibly energetic, soulful, connected event that Yetunde put on. It was really mind-blowing. And I guess it's really what it reminded me of, that event where you and I both met, in answer to your question, is, I'm going to start at the end, which is embodiment. Right. I think the big shift we're moving towards, and what my own journey has been one from being pretty disembodied, where I didn't understand myself. I wasn't self-aware. I wasn't vulnerable. I was afraid. I was locked up in my head. I didn't connect head and heart. That was really the first 39 years of my life. And I spent the last 7 unlearning that disembodiment. And I've actually moved towards a more embodied state as a leader. And what I mean by that is that I try and role model what I believe rather than just talk about what I believe. And I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts for me, Obi. And I'm sure there's a lot more underneath that you want to expand on.
Oh, Garry, you're giving me goosebumps already. Right? It's just, I already wish we could talk for hours on that, because the number of, I was going to say, you know, the number of leaders that I work with, but I think I'd rather just say I know personally what that's like. I know personally what that's like to to think. It's, you know, it's busy. It's almost, I describe it as that Matrix sort of experience where you're plugged in, right? You're just doing, but your heart's not there, and you know something's not quite right. You can't really put your finger on it, and then you just think, am I really connected with who I am, with who Obi is, with my heart, with my soul, with life, with what I'm passionate about? And I love the fact that you said it's about just, in a sense, walking your talk, right? You're not gonna say something and not role model it and not live it. And certainly when it comes to leadership, I mean, we've all read the books, you know, we all kind of know the stories, but the big difference is, do we live it? Do we believe it? Do we actually walk that talk? Or is it, you know, do as I say, but not necessarily as I do? And I love your willingness to go straight there. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's just one of those things, isn't it? The thing is, it's so innocent, you know, and I'm sure you see this with the work you do with the leaders. And like you said, I really appreciate you sharing your journey, because we don't even realize, I didn't even realize, right? The social script of, from a very young age, you know, get your grades, get on with everyone, don't challenge the status quo, say yes. You know, it starts at a really young age, and we just get narrower and narrower and narrower as a human species till we enter the world of work, and we're 1/100th of what we could have been had we been allowed to flourish and keep that complexity and that open mind and that open heart all the way through those first 18 years. So I really feel like where so many of us are at is, wow, what we can be, that childlike, playful, open-hearted, exploratory human. It's not just for 2 and 3-year-old kids. Wow, that's so exciting. So I really think we're at the edge of you remember the technological Moore's law curve that everyone talks about tech? Yeah, tech this, exponential technology. No one's talking about exponential humanity, Obi. We're at the edge of a human consciousness shift that we would never believe was possible even 3 years ago. It's about to spike like that if we allow it, if we get out of our own way.
Indeed. And again, that's a big part of it, getting out of our own way. And it's, for me, that's certainly been a huge journey. I call it a journey of letting go, right? Letting go of the things that I put my worth in, my significance in. I've got to tell you this, just because of where we're going already. One of the things, I love reading books, but I also love watching movies. And my boys and my wife always have a go at me because I don't just watch a movie once and say, oh yeah, that was nice. I go deep, right? I'm like, oh, you know, what's the underlying story and the message? And the one that I watched recently that I feel just speaks to what we're talking about, I actually rewatched it, is The Family Man with Nicolas Cage. I don't know if
I've seen it, yes.
Seen that. And what's really stark, when I watched it this time, I asked myself, what's this movie about? What is it about? Especially from a leadership perspective, right? Because he's this Wall Street, he's the president of an incredible organization worth, I think, $130 billion, making loads of money. And I boiled it down to, it's about where we get our worth from, where we get our significance from as leaders. And he then has this, you know, parallel journey, a glimpse into a life where he had kids and loved ones, and realized that his worth and significance wasn't from what he got, but from love and from the relationships and from the connections. But it was hard work. You just see the journey through the film. It's hard work, just letting go of all of the things that we want that give us that worth, to just what life, what the planet, what the world wants to offer, that is so profound and so moving and so deep. So I don't know why, but that just came to mind as we're talking about just the challenge of letting go to be all of who we're meant to be, and the positive impact that can have in the world.
You just threw a reaction back through the screen to me. The back of my head just went boom, honestly, because do you know what I feel you're speaking to? And it's not a word that I've used much. Okay, some people talk energy, spiritual, people believe what they want to believe, they feel what they want to feel, right? But we're talking about the soul. Like, what's that? Are we living into our soul? Or
Indeed.
are we just living this, like, we're way more than that 50, 100 years that we'll be on the planet. Hopefully, if we're lucky. We're so much more than that. And trying to allow that to express through us is the journey I'm still on, because I'm still fall down most of the traps that we all do.
Sure.
You know, the self-worth thing, it never goes away. It's a continuous roller coaster of trying to remember that actually, as we attach ourselves to that job title or that next holiday or that next pay rise, that it isn't about that. It's the story we tell ourselves on the inside. And it's continuous practice, but I find it gets more fun when we realize it's about the soul journey, and not just about the operational leadership journey. There's a lot more to it. I think I'd like to add.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And let's bring all of this, because it's very much on the theme of this show, which is mental resilience. So this particular season is focused on mental resilience and mental resilience among leaders. And you talked about that internal game, right? So let's start off with this. What is mental resilience to you? And then why would you say it's important in life and in leadership?
Yeah, they're just brilliant questions. Honestly, they're just brilliant questions. So my immediate reaction, if I go to like Garry, the version that was so stuck in I'll be okay when I have the job, the car, that whole first 39 years of my life, what shifted for me was the mental resilience is innate. We already have it. And I think that for me, this is the big misnomer. People think we've got to develop resilience. We've got to create it from somewhere out there. We've already got it. We actually have 100% perfect resilience the day we're born. All that happens is that we layer it up with story, beliefs, I'll be okay when. So we actually give away our innate resilience. The more we attach to a story, or I'll be okay when, or when I get that promotion. So the more that we actually and I love you letting the story of letting go is just that really hit me hard. The more that we can let go and stay as free and emergent in our experience of life, the resilience comes through because it's already there. It's hardwired. It's already hard. It's there.
Wow. I can't help but think, we say this all the time, right? Kids are resilient. We talk about that. They're like, oh, they'll navigate that. Yeah, they'll bounce back. It's that because they don't hold on to all of these things, right? It's so true. It's you don't need to read a book for this. You just need to watch kids and think back to what we were like as kids. And it's true. Yeah, there was that incredible resilience, but we layer it and we get lost in our head, as you said a few times. Just so to connect it then to leadership, why would you say that resilience is important from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, it's incredibly important because it creates space for me. So the more that we sit in that space of open resilience, again, i.e. less fear, less anxiety, less I'll be okay when, fill in the blank, the more we sit in the space before all of that, that's capacity. And that's capacity for you to sense at an embodied level, at a head level. You have, let me bring this to life, because I know it can seem a bit esoteric. If I go back 7 years, I say up to age 39, I felt that my view of the world was pretty narrow. I understood a lot, lots of privilege growing up in the West, et cetera, et cetera. But my view was still quite myopic. What's happened in the last 7 years, but particularly the last 2 even, is as I've understood more of what I'm expressing at the moment, as I've realized that the less I'm wrapped up in story, fear, etc., nothing on the outside has changed. Okay, I've worked in the same corporate job for 12 years, Obi. Okay, I'm with the same woman for the last 10. I live in the same part of the world. On the outside, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
On the inside, there's 100x expansion of my capacity to understand, to sense, to support, to guide, to love, to connect. We are completely abundant sources of energy, genuinely. And we can only sense into and unlock that when we come from a place of mental resilience, which is already there.
Yeah. Wow. I can't imagine that leaders listening to this, watching this, wouldn't say, boy, I want that. 100x just growth in perspective, in insight. What would you say unlocked that for you?
Yeah. So first of all, very, very easy, getting help. You talk about letting go. I think, vulnerability, the vulnerability to say I don't have all the answers, vulnerability to say I need help, vulnerability to say I don't know everything, vulnerability to say, you know, I've got to get comfortable with not knowing what's coming next. Look at the pandemic the last 2 years. My goodness, what a great playground for vulnerability. So the more that we come from that place of, back to your point, letting go, right? Vulnerability for me is the art of letting go. And behind that, I call vulnerability the gateway behavior personally, because I've role modeled it, I understand it, I embody it. Again, it's not something you have to do. It's something that you practice. You practice letting go, you practice listening, you practice saying, I don't know. And I learned off of one, so I have a podcast, if you don't mind me sharing, Obi, called Value Through Vulnerability, 138 episodes with leaders, CEOs, consultants. And one of the best conversations ever that I had was with Garry Ridge. So WD-40, the little lubricants can, the little blue.
Yeah.
So Garry Ridge is the CEO based in San Diego. And I asked him what's his definition of vulnerability. Very, very simply, he said, the ability to say, I don't know.
Wow.
And that is a gateway. So what happened to me is that I had that moment where I had the car, the salary, everything, age 39. I was going to go one of two ways. One is the midlife crisis that far too many of us in the West talk about.
Sure.
Or it's the midlife awakening, which I'm really grateful was my route. And what happened? I got curious. So letting go, vulnerability, curiosity. They are the critical behaviors, and we've already got them.
Yeah. It's amazing how it's often something challenging, a crisis that brings us to that point that we need to start asking ourselves different questions and become curious, and or we have that breakdown or the awakening, as you said. And I don't know anyone that that doesn't take that path. I describe it as the dark night of the soul. And I remember having that. This was almost 10 years ago now. It's, you know, that the world is my oyster. I'm setting up a business and written my first book, but reached this crunch point of everything just falling apart, and we're paying our mortgage on the credit card, and I'm feeling broken, right? I equated success to success equals money in the bank. There was no money in the bank, you know, and I'm thinking, that's it. I'm just worthless, insignificant, dot. And I felt I had two choices. One was I want out. I just want out of this world, out of the, you know, pain. Ended up thinking, hey, listen, I've got wife and 3 kids. Nope, I'm not going to go down that road. Well, then, Obi, what are you going to do? And it was a big point for me to say, actually, I don't know. I really don't know how to do this. And that for me was a big part of my awakening, to looking deep within and realizing, well, Obi, it's you. And at that point, I mean, I was an NLP practitioner, you know, coach. I was doing tons of stuff then already. But the big difference was it was all here. It was all in my head. It wasn't deep in my heart, hadn't internalized it in my soul. There was so much knowledge, but not the transformation. And it was, for me, I come back to it again and again as a turning point in a journey towards letting go and really connecting deep within. Who am I? Where does my worth come from? Where does my significance come from? And how do I hold that space of that innate worth and innate significance, and therefore express all of who I am from that place, rather than trying to get loads of stuff. So I can, connect with your journey and love just what you've drawn out there, Garry.
Again, I have another reaction as you share that in the back of my neck. And this is the thing, I want to explain what I'm doing when I say that, because someone might be going, what's he on about? This is energy. The more you embody, the more you understand that we are energetic beings, you start to sense into like what's going on in your body. And this is, so one of your earlier questions was how did you become aware of all of this?
Sure.
It is support. And I'm not saying this just because Obi's got in his podcast. Like, you can't do this stuff alone. We're social beings. Like whether it's a coach, whether it's a friend, whether it's a partner, creating this space that that Obi's creating now is a sacred space, right? If you've invested watching us now, even for 20 minutes, that's 20 minutes of your life you've invested in you. We need to do that more often. We need to introspect, connect, go through those great questions you just asked. We tend not to do that. We tend to get rid of all of that in favor of being busy. If I'm not busy, I'm not worthy. I've got to hit the targets. I've got to. No. I said 100x, and I'm not exaggerating. What would you do with all of those forecasts, those budgets, those growth plans, if you had 100x capacity within just you tomorrow?
Yeah.
How differently would that look? We all got it. It's waiting. It's waiting for us. Like, this is the thing. Like, I get so excited about it because it's not something we've got to go out and buy off the shelf. It's sitting inside us.
Yeah.
But we do need help. We definitely need help. The space created to allow it to come forward. And that's the number one biggest shift. I've had coaches, I've had guides over the last 7 years. I've not done it on my own. Conversations like this are part of that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had coaching and continue to. Counseling has been amazing. Just, different types of support, from meditation and prayers, all sorts, just to go on this journey. It's you're right. It's something that we need guides, we need partners, we need supporters, we need friends to help us navigate this journey. I'd love to just to explore this with you, especially from a 100x space, and just give people an insight into your own mental game. Perhaps share one of your greatest leadership successes and what it's revealed to you about your mental game, your resilience, what's going on the inside that has helped you with that success.
Oh, it's such a brilliant question. So there's a few routes I could go, but I'm gonna. It's actually almost, see, my little fear is starting to kick in even as I'm about to share it, because I've never shared it with anybody publicly yet as clearly as I'm about to. So you're getting like a hot off the press one. So as I mentioned, so I work in a corporate space, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I've worked there for 12 years. Really like the company. I love my immediate team. It's a growing business, etc. Really, really positive, base to be from. However, I didn't always show up as me. I would not have had this conversation even 5 years ago with you, because I would have been worried about what would my boss say if he saw it on the internet? What would happen if the organization saw it? What if? So I would have completely closed myself back into 1x Garry. What's happened over the last 7 years, but particularly the last 2, is I've started to speak my truth. And I've practiced doing that more and more and more. LinkedIn, my own group, I do keynote talks, I host podcasts, live stream show, whole range of different things. But what's happened, and this is a really interesting bit, as I've spoken my truth more and more, important point, my truth, not right or wrong, just my truth. As I've spoken my truth more and more and more, it's gone from my work organization initially being a bit like, can you not do that during work hours? Someone seeing it, all the traditional political maneuvering that happens.
Yeah.
To me now leading sessions within my own work organization around the stuff that I love. So I'm not only looking after a 20 million business on the sales side, I'm leading on people and culture. I'm running hackathons. I'm offering one-to-one support for some of our managing directors, right? So that shift, what I'm pointing to here is I let go of the story that if I show up more fully, they're going to sack me. One of the biggest fears that any one of us as a human being will have.
Yeah.
The difference between us playing small and being 1x, or showing up fully in our truth, in our values, in our beliefs.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest gaps, because I used to believe, Obi, like I think many of us probably do, that when you reach that stage of I'm more aware, or am I in the right place? Is it misaligned values? Yes, maybe. But my invitation to anyone watching is start with you first, back to the principles of the work you do. It's an inside out job. So before making any rash decisions about leaving the employer, rash decisions about jumping over here or there, that's the time to go inside, is my invitation. And go, right, is it actually the organization or is it me? Am I prepared to show up What conversations do I want to be involved in that I'm not involved in? Do I listen well or not? You know, because when I started going that route, like I say, number one shift for me, that's where my expansion started kicking in, because I had the support and I believed in me enough that they will get value from the whole of Garry and a great sales guy. And that's where it's ended up being. But it was scary. It was very scary at one point in time.
Sure.
But I'm so pleased that I had the confidence to know that what I was bringing mattered.
Yeah. Wow. 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 Garry, yeah, I mean, what, not only an amazing story, but just what you've unpacked. And I've got this thing about, you know, people say it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. Very often we see the end of the journey and we think, oh, wow, yeah, they made it. They're incredible. Look at Garry, he's phenomenal. But what this is an opportunity to do is give people a peek into not just, oh, here's what I did day to day, but here's what was going on inside of me. And I just want to pull out a few things for people who are watching and listening. One, it was the awareness of your fear, but also the awareness of your worth, the awareness that actually I matter. And it really does matter that I show up fully. But also you talked about letting go of the story, right? People, statistically, I think neuroscientists say that about 77% of our self-talk is negative. Now, are people even aware of that self-talk? A lot of it is subconscious, right? A lot of it is, it's just in the twinkle of an eye. We say to ourselves, nah, I shouldn't do that. Why should I? Or they're going to say this, they're going to say that. And we convince ourselves to dial down and not to show up fully, not to be our best selves, not to be our true selves. And therefore, we limit the entire population, the world, our organizations, all because of the story that's going on in here, the voice in our head, the lies about ourselves that we are listening to. And I love the fact that you said, hey, this is just my truth, right? It's just, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm sensing, this is what I'm feeling. And it wasn't like the thing you were trying to offer was, hey guys, I want to figure out how to blow up my organization and kill people. No, right? It's just, I mean, you know what I mean? And yet, for some reason, when it comes to us showing up as our best selves, for fear, and maybe, we fear disconnection. And who do you think you are to show up that way? Who are you not to? We need it. We need one another to show up as our best selves. So thank you for just sharing, giving us an insight into what's going on and the journey that's required to reframe just that dialogue internally so that we can be our best selves. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks for putting that out for people as well, because I think I just want to add one extra thing, if I may, just very quickly. I love the way that you're pointing to this. It's almost as if the best sort of metaphor I can bring is the genie's bottle. Right? We've literally, for the last 100 years, made a hell of a lot of money for a few people, and I'm very grateful. I'm not done bad out the last 40 years of my life.
Sure.
But that was a lottery of birth. That was nothing strategic. What we've got is this genie of exponential, 100x potential, literally just waiting to go boop. And I think that's exactly where we are right now in this moment. Is that bottle's about to, that cap's about to pop. And it needs to, because we need big solutions to big problems, such as climate, such as social justice. But we're not going to solve them with the same half dozen people that are in control now. So it needs every one of us showing up to help turn around the challenges that we have. And that's what I'm so excited about.
Yeah. I love that analogy. I'd like to then, just building on that, connect it to this next thought and question. One of the things that I've experienced over the years from my own challenges and difficulties and wrestling, as well as just the leaders that I've coached and trained, I've discovered this truth, that when life squeezes you, and it does, right? It does for all of us. It has over the last 18 months for many people, in particular leaders. But when life squeezes you and the pressure is on, what you're like on the inside will come out, especially if you haven't done that hard work of really tapping into that innate resilience. So just from your experience, how can leaders make sure that what they're like on the inside helps them to be resilient and helps them to show up as their best selves in the world? What would you say?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. Self-awareness comes back to two things that are closely linked for me. One is self-awareness and one is vulnerability. Vulnerability to ask, it can be, accountability partners, right? One of the best things that I've had is building a global network, an intentionally diverse global network. People I can pick the phone up to, that I can jump on Zoom to, just say, hey, I've got this challenge. Like, I'm thinking it's this, but it's not feeling in my body that's actually really what I'm trying to achieve. Can I just bounce it off you for 5 minutes, Obi?
Yeah.
That is huge. Such a huge, because again, we're so conditioned to believe that we should only represent our organization if we work in an organization, or just stay within your community. Like, that's how we've been wired.
Yeah.
So that intentional diversity of your personal network as well as your workplace networks.
Amazing.
That's been massive. Huge. And that's my number one invitation, is be super intentional, not only about building it, but curating it.
Sure. I love that. Just being intentional, opening up. I can imagine that also just opens up your mind, right, to new possibilities, new perspectives. Helps without a doubt to keep you fresh. Well, final question, Garry, for now. What advice would you give to leaders about how best to develop their internal game, and make sure that internal climate is as positive, is as engaging, is as resilient as possible?
Yeah, my number one invitation I would like to offer would be to stay childishly curious. Like, genuinely, that kid that you've got, or you've got in your family, that keeps asking why, they're asking it for a reason, because they want to understand. They're not doing it to be annoying. Have that same level of curiosity of yourself. So, why am I thinking that? Why did I say no to that person, but I said yes to that person? This is never about judgment. It's always about exploration. So I think the more we can do that with our own narratives, and also with the support of third parties where we need it, that's the transformational bit. Is don't take what that 77% of thoughts is telling you, because there's 23% in there that's the stuff that matters.
Wow. Thank you. I love that. I love that. Just that curiosity, that childish curiosity. Why am I thinking that? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? That's when we begin to discover that there is a huge world inside of us, a really huge world inside of us, a world of resilience, a world of potential, 100x, 1000x. We begin to go on this incredible journey. And no doubt, I think every single leader listening to this, I hope they replay it, they rewatch it, and just dig deep into the nuggets. And I want to go back to something you've said a few times. Just don't feel like you have to do this alone. There are many people who have gone before us that can help navigate that journey and partner with us as we do that. Garry, I'm sure, I know for sure that we're going to have a conversation again. I'd love to have you on the show again and just riff on some other topics as we get into the new year and explore just some other ways of helping people develop, grow, and just be inspired. But for now, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Really great to have you. And to all our listeners and viewers, I hope you enjoyed listening to Garry. I'll put his contact details in the show notes. And remember that if you want to be a courageous and resilient leader, if you want to live life on purpose and with purpose, then it starts from the inside out. Have a great day and see you on